Open the meeting of Cabinet. First of all, any apologies for absence? None received. Thank you. I've not been notified of any urgent business. No? Correct. Okay. Item 3, declarations of interest. Take silence to mean no. Item 4, public question time. Have we received any? No public questions. Thank you. Item 5, the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 12. Is Cabinet happy to approve those as a correct record? Agreed. Thank you very much. So that takes us to item 6, beginning on page 13. Councillor Jabbar, are you going to talk us through this school's national funding formula?
Yes, Chair. We'll do a double act myself and Councillor Jake. So basically this is the amount of money that our schools get from the funding that we get from the government. So what we've done is that we've consulted with the school forum and come up with suggestions about how a school should be funded for the next financial year. The reports, the details of that is in this report. So what we're suggesting is that minimum level of funding for primary school pupils should be 3,500 and for secondary 4,800, I beg your pardon. On top of that, Chair, that there are additional funding available to school, particularly if they've got children with disability or special need. So we've had consultations, as I said, with the school forum, and following on from the consultation, we're making this recommendation. Just to make it clear that no single schools actually lose out in any way, they're actually getting something as part of the this formula. I think one of the issues that we've had is that the number of children who's requiring additional support because of the special needs they have. And because of that, you'll see in the report that the dedicated school fund is actually the actual fund is gone into a further deficit, and we will be actually producing a recovery plan to address that. But this isn't something that's just happening to Oldham. It's happening across nationally. And I don't know whether anybody's been following the news for the last couple of days, apart from Brexit, that is, that the government has actually made an announcement for additional funding to address this issue, and we will be getting some of that. I'd like to say, really, that this is something that they've known about, and they should have done something more than wait for the council's fund to go into deficit. And we've been liaising with the government on this issue for some time now. With that, I'm going to ask Paul, who's the Cabinet member for Education, obviously, if there's anything particular he wants to pick up. Thank you, Chair.
I think Councillor Jabbar has fully explained in terms of what this situation is, but basically I think we're all faced, most local authorities are faced with insufficient monies being allocated to the local authorities, and especially in terms of meeting the educational needs of students. The SEN funding in the high needs block is in significant deficit. That's not uncommon from all the local authorities that I've been in touch with. They are faced with a huge demand and rising demand for EHCP plans, which is statutory. We've got to allocate the money for them. The Schools Forum agreed to move 1% of money from the schools block to the high needs block, which is the equivalent of £1.899 million. Even with that movement, there's still not enough money in the fund. So we welcome the government's initiative over the last, today, in terms of providing some additional money. But I sincerely doubt whether it's going to be sufficient to cover the needs of the schools, which we were talking about. So we are in a situation, like Councillor Jabbar has already said, no school's going to lose out. We're moving to the national funding formula, which is in 2021, which has to come into all schools, and I think we've got the start of a decent recovery plan in order to make sure that DSG is balanced. But there's a lot more work to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillors Jakes and Jabbar. I think one observation that needs to be made is, Councillor Jabbar, you said how this should have been addressed much sooner by the government rather than waiting for councils and DSG funds to go into deficit. This is just another example of where Brexit has caused complete and utter paralysis down in Westminster, and they're not addressing anything other than that issue. And it's you can argue over whether they're even sufficiently addressing that issue. But this is the position that us and other local authorities up and down the country find ourselves with. You know, no answers from the government because they're trying to provide answers to something that's taken up all of the time. Thank you. The members agree to the recommendations as set on page 14 of the report? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Councillor Jabbar, it's over to you again on item 7, the council tax and non-domestic rates base forecast 2019-20.
Thank you, Chair. So this report deals with the council tax base for 1920. 1920 and yeah, it is 1920, isn't it, when it's written like that? So the financial year 2019 and 2020. That's better, isn't it? So it deals with the council tax base and also the business tax base. So it's quite a complex formula, but what the main point out of this report, Chair, is that having looked at all the various key components to arrive at the council tax base, I'm pleased to say that next year there will be an increase on band D of 1,027, which roughly equates to about £1.6 million of additional revenue through our council tax base. In terms of business rates, at this moment in time, we are estimating that it will be 53.469 million, but that's an estimate. It needs to be finalized yet. Basically, this report gives the authority for the finance director to submit the various data, both for council tax and business rates, to Ministry of Housing and Local Government. And also it's requiring us to approve a delegation to myself, to the Deputy Chief Executive and the Finance Director. Happy to answer any question, Chair, that people got.
Thanks, Councillor Jabbar. Do any members have any questions?
No.
No? So are members happy to agree the recommendations that begin on page 48? Agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, on to item 8. This is single-use plastics, and it's in both mine and Councillor Shah's name, but Councillor Shah has indicated that she wants to talk to this one.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just to present the single-use plastic strategy in response to a full council motion on single-use plastic. But it also gives me the opportunity actually to show off a little, because actually we've always long in this authority looked at the issue of single-use plastics and how to reduce them and reuse them and recycle them for many, many years before the BBC programme, which actually highlighted the issues around it and the pollution in seas, oceans and beaches, and made a debate that people started having. But actually, as an authority, we've looked at this for years and years and years, and it shows that actually we do have taken seriously our environmental responsibilities. This gives us a really good opportunity, following the motion that went to the council in March, to actually lead by example and show other people the steps that we'll be taking within this strategy, which are listed within this document, but also lead by example. So we will be doing that. So community groups and other organisations and businesses who we are our partners or not will be able to, take lead by us.
Thanks, Councillor Shah. Do any members have any observations on the report about single-use plastics? Councillor Jabbar.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think really this is a brilliant piece of work, and I think we should all get behind not just accepting it as a strategy, but actually putting it into practice. So as you can see, Chair, I'm carrying my Fit for Oldham plastic bottle. It's reusable, and I think we should do that because, if you think about it, going back 10, 15 years, we never used to carry plastic bottles, disposable plastic bottles every day with us to drink out of, and then just bin it. And it's become a fashionable thing to do now every day. I see people carrying plastic bottles, maybe 2, sometimes 3. and then drinking out of it, well, that's brilliant. But then just discarding it, well, it's not right, because 15 years ago people didn't die because of dehydration because they didn't have plastic bottles, and now suddenly, right, we come up with this idea that you've got to have 2-3 plastic bottles if you're going to drink out of it, otherwise some miraculous disease will come and attack you, and then you'll be fighting for your life, and you'll end up with the A&E or something like that. So I just think it's because lifestyles change and people responded to clever advertising. And I think, Chair, we really need to, change our habits and become more conscious about the environment that we live in and the damage that it does for the way we behave. And why should we repeatedly use single plastics when we don't need to? And this has been provided by Oldham Council to its staff, to all its members, and please use it. Please use it. I'm going to be using it, and hope certainly in the council chamber that we all use things which are not single plastic. But more than that, I think if you look at some of the data around plastics that's been washing up in our oceans, and the powerful BBC program, my goodness me, we have a responsibility for our future generation, and we have to change. So I think, as well as having this strategy, just to appeal really to everyone, at office, at home, wherever, at your workplace, please do make that little change to protect the environment and support this strategy in its true spirit.
All right, thank you, Councillor Jabbar. Anybody else? Oh, Councillor Jakes.
Yeah, if we're just following on from Councillor Jabbar, I think it's really good to see that lots and lots of schools now are actually using these reusable water bottles, and clearly that the environment is on their agenda. So I think the best way of making changes is through young people, and I think the young people can encourage adults to take the necessary steps and also educate those people who think they always know better, not know best. So I think the work schools are doing is commendable, and I think the young people will change the world for us in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jakes. I think on issues like this, when people watch Blue Planet or you watch the ocean rescue documentaries on the news channel, you can feel quite powerless when you see the volume of plastic that gets dumped into the sea. And I think that what we need to make clear and make people feel more confident about is making small decisions and changing the way that they behave, because if you do it and everybody does it, then it all adds up into one big contribution to reducing the amount of plastic that ends up in the sea or in landfills. So it's about everybody collectively making small changes, and there's a big difference, and that's what this policy is about, starting here at Oldham Council. So, do members agree the recommendations as set out on page 64?
Agreed.
Agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, that takes us to item 9. Councillor Chowan, the contract arrangements for the Right Start service, Bridgewater NHS Trust.
Thank you, Chair. So the aim of this service is to tackle a number of key early childhood outcomes, which include health visiting service, children's service centres, family nurse practitioner, oral health, and delivery of Oldham version of GMA stage assessment. The reason we're going for shorter extension is because we want to look at in changing environment of Oldham, or do we need to modify this contract to make sure that it meets the needs of residents of Oldham, especially children. So we're very clear, we determined that children of the borough of Oldham should receive excellent care, not even good care, excellent care. Their parents should not be pushed from pillar to post. It should be a one journey for a child, which is one of the key priority for this administration, is to make sure that there's a one safe journey where organizations are talking to each other rather than patients and parents being pushed and pulled. And also looking at a number of things, how our family health nurses can help us to deliver school readiness, health visitors support, how they can help us to identify safeguarding concerns at early stage. So we had a number of discussions between us, Councillor Jakes and Councillor Chatterton, and we think we need some time to come up with that whole holistic offer and our expectations from this contract, and hence extension of 1 year. And we are hoping that this will give us enough time to identify what we need exactly, how do we improve services, how we bring services together, and get the best outcome for the residents of Oldham. So I ask you to support.
Thank you, Councillor Chown. Do any other members wish to contribute on this item? No. You all said that without moving your lips. Okay. In that case, the recommendation is set out on page 83. Do members agree?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, so into item 10, the Oldham Housing and Social Welfare Advice Services contract extension. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. This is, I suppose, in terms much the same kind of idea as the previous item, really. The current services provided for us by First Choice Homes, and as the report outlines, there have been significant changes and additional pressures in our housing services generally. So one of the pressures which has produced additional demand is the requirements of the Homelessness Reduction Act. However, I think the other pressures are more not more nebulous. You can't use that word anymore. Arise, I think, from the changes in the pressures on social housing and changes in the private rented sector, which have led to increasing demands for social housing and have meant that we are placing an increasing number of households into temporary accommodation. These are issues that we'll be looking at in our new housing strategy, and we are looking to develop a new Oldham housing offer which addresses both the supply and demand side in one sense. So we'll be looking at how we respond in terms of increasing the supply of housing which meets the needs of Oldham's population, but it's also about trying to make sure that we make the best use of the limited resources that we have, and we'll be looking at restructuring our housing advice offer in order to make sure that people are getting the right kind of support so that they are helped into the right kind of housing for them. So in the light of that and those changes, what we're suggesting here in this report is again that we extend the current contract for 12 months to allow us to finalise the housing strategy, to review the delivery and what we want to put into the housing advice contract, and then consider our options in terms of tendering for the service.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Roberts. Do any members wish to speak on this item? No. All right, in that case, do members agree the recommendation as set out on the page 93?
Agreed.
Agreed. All right, thank you. So that concludes the business in the broadcast part of the meeting. We have to move the exclusion of press and public. Someone move?
Move.
Moved.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. So that means the cameras need to go off.